What is up, everybody? Welcome to Deadlock and Load, episode number 3. I'm Cryptic here with, of course, BSJ, and this will be a fun episode, man. I'm super excited. How you doing?
Yeah, man, I'm good. Just got done playing 5 hours of Deadlock. Played with the Sing Sing stack. I've been practicing the hard carries. I kind of just embraced my identity this week and said, I'm going to get better at shooting, and I'm going to play like a hard carry. So I just played a bunch of Haze and Wraith this week. And let's just say my aim is like only slightly terrible now.
Okay, I mean that's solid improvement.
Yeah,
I feel like,
yeah. I mean that's big improvement.
Definitely improvements from I think last week when we spoke, and you're like, I can't play this set of heroes because I can't shoot them.
Yeah, exactly. So I can at least still push 4 on Haze and
Okay, good.
ignore my aim for a bit. But yeah, man, how you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, it's been fun. It's been an interesting week. I feel like Deadlock is not. I feel like this patch didn't quite. Like a lot of things definitely went in the direction that I thought they would, but I think there's also some new things that I'm realizing that are not what I expected at all.
And
what are those? Kind of excited to get to that later in our what we learned section.
No spoilers.
Yeah. So no spoilers yet, but I feel like that's going to be an interesting discussion. But for this week, to start things off, we've talked about this a little bit, which is kind of putting together a hero list that we can like update episode to episode after patches or whatever in terms of like what we think is like good generally for players. Because I think there's a couple different ways we could do the tier list, right? Like in terms of how we want to rank the heroes.
I think it's purely our perspective, like what we are experiencing between the two of us. If there's a huge gap in our decision, then either one of us says, I don't necessarily know as much about that hero and we give it up, or we just like meet halfway in the middle. Are you cool with that?
Yeah, I'm cool. Yeah. I was wondering how you wanted to do it, so that makes sense. I'm fine with it. I feel like we're going to have a lot of similarities, but this is going to be kind of fun to see the differences between NA and EU in terms of hero variety and like what heroes we think are good, because you're playing the EU servers and I'm on the classic NA servers.
I've heard some EU streamers saying they're playing over on NA because they want better games. So I don't know. Maybe the shooters. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't that way in every professional game, but you never know. So I mean, without further ado, are you just ready to get into the tier list? We're hyping it up. You ready to get started? Yeah. Okay.
Let's do it. Let's lock in. Let's do it. Tier list time, baby.
I need to make sure I don't. Let me get it correct here. Okay, I got it. We're good. I need to get this out of the way. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. I've only got so many screens. I've got you on one screen. I've got this on the other. The people that are not watching, like they're just listening, you guys are being spared. It's getting better every week, though. Last week, the first week, we had to do a remake. The second week, I didn't count you in, so you're just sitting there awkwardly as I'm saying, go ahead. And this week,
that was pretty good.
I'll say all things considered, I'll take it. So we got the standard SABCD. We can adjust this over time. We can get a little more creative, but we also have a second tier list that we're going to be making. No spoilers. We're going to talk about exactly what that tier list is. A bit more of a fun one, but this one is pure meta. What we think about these heroes and where they belong in terms of your chance of winning. So let's kick it off. Where would you put Abrams? We'll take turns assigning, like choosing, or we'll take turns going first on what we think.
So here's the thing about Deadlock is I think the game is extraordinarily well balanced. So I think for the first time in a long time, like this tier list is going to be heavily loaded on the top side as opposed to being like balanced in B or something. So I would say Abrams is a high A tier hero.
I'm down for that. I think, it'll get a bit spoiling a little bit about what I think about the hero pool, but I think it is really crucial to have at least 1 or 2 guys that initiate fights and stun and run the hell in. Yeah. And I feel like if you don't have one of these on your team, everyone's just kind of looking at each other. Someone gonna go, and I'm just playing Haze or Wraith, and then nothing ever happens, and then they jump us because they have one. So, and Abrams, like, he's weird because he's a tank, but he also seems like he's predominantly burst. Like
he's a burst tank.
Yeah, he's a burst tank, which I'm not really familiar with. Are there equivalents of that in Dota? I know this is a Deadlock podcast, but
the closest would be something like a Legion Commander, right?
Yeah, I guess more. Yeah, the thing about Abrams is he's also pretty good at disengaging. Like, he's one of the better heroes at, like, he buys items that allow him to get out and then reinitiate the fight 10 seconds later. So he's like a Legion combined with a Slark. You know, he kind of pounces in, tries to kill you, and then disengages. But yeah, okay.
He's
so
fun.
Let's not spend a million years on this playlist, even though every hero is going to be fun to talk about. I would put Bebop probably, you know, we put Abrams A. I'd put Bebop probably low B, maybe C.
Yeah, okay. So I personally despise this hero, but I don't see him
in terms of playing
win
against
often.
it or being good.
In terms of playing against it,
okay.
I feel like this hero is like the most anti-fun hero. I would say maybe C tier. I don't feel like it actually wins is the issue. Like this hero is super annoying. It just sits in lane and waits forever, hits a hook, and then suddenly he's like up on souls. And it's really annoying. But right now, in the terms of the game, the meta, I guess, Spirit is really strong, and that is very good for Bebop, but there's just other heroes that do way more damage more consistently that don't rely on like the gimmick of the hook. Similarly to Pudge, dude. It's kind of this, it's like, who would have guessed a hook hero is very reliant on this hook, otherwise they feel kind of useless.
Yeah, I think he's one of those heroes that gets worse as people get better at the game. I feel like earlier on when I was playing this game, like my first week or two, when nobody really knew what they're doing, they're too busy shooting the orbs to worry about dodging things. You know, hooks galore. But nowadays I agree. I mean, I put him low B, C. Like I was trying to be a bit generous because like I also don't play a ton of Bebop. But I feel the same thing. Like he just doesn't change the game, and I don't see him like winning the game for his team. There's just heroes I'd rather have backline damage ulting like his. There's heroes I'd rather initiate with. There's heroes I'd rather burst them with. He's kind of like a jack of all trades, master of none. So put him in C. What about Dynamo?
So here's Dynamo as a concept, as a hero in general, is an absolute S tier hero. I think for winning pubs on him, he's like low A. I don't know.
Okay, I mean, we're talking pubs. We can kind of have a mixture of solo queue and team stacks here, and it's also just our experience. So I've been playing a bit more team stacking with like the Sing Sing stack and everything, and Dynamo kind of he kind of owns in those games. I'm down to have him be like low S because if there's any amount of communication going on within the team, Dynamo is sick. His first spell in lane is like scary as shit too. I laned against him for the first time 1v1, and if you let him hit you with that, it's like he buys headshot booster, and then that's like 400 damage or something. So
it's really good. He's overall, like, his entire kit is exceptional. He has one of the best saves in the game. Like it's an ability that you can move allies with, dodge any sort of like debuff in that time. You can dodge big ultimates
like Wraith.
Like this. Yeah, like combustion from Infernus, Wraith ult, like there's like Hawk. There's so many things that Dynamo brings utility wise. He has one of the best heals in the game and the best ultimate in the game. Like this hero is so sick. And
in the right hands, he's fucking terrifying for sure.
Absolutely. It takes a skill to be good at this hero. It's not like something you're gonna go in and just like pick up and like crush games on, like with other like regular bullet damage carries, right? Like this one is a finesse hero.
Agreed. So I've got Great Talon, and if there was one hero I would put in D, it would be Great Talon, to be honest.
Really?
I'll put him here for now. You're allowed to veto, and we might move him. The reason why I put him D is because D's nuts. No. So the physical damage build, like the bullet damage build, seems like he's a worse Vindicta.
It's
like
terrible.
I'd rather have Vindicta, and then what I guess I'm thinking about the hero is when I've watched high skill streamers play him, it's like an excuse to style on people because you max out the extra charge, like the cooldown, and you burst people with your first spell, and there is a lot of skill involved, and it's impressive. But I feel like he makes doing what you do to kill people like harder. Like you have to land like 3 arrows perfectly, which when people are really skilled, it works. But I feel like there's only one route to really build him, which I think most heroes have options. And then his route is like super skill based. So my experience with Great Talon is he's useless. But I think maybe in super high tier games, people can style on him, but I think it's due to skill discrepancy, not because this hero's like better than other heroes, if that makes sense. What do you think?
Okay, so I kind of agree with a lot of those points. I think right now the flight heroes are just a little bit stronger than they should be in terms of like they're hard to deal with if you don't have, like you said earlier, somebody's
Mo and
taking
Krill with
initiators.
a Phantom Strike. Yeah.
You gotta have like Mo and Krill. You have to have Abrams. You've got to have like a 7, which is not that common to see a 7, a Kelvin, like a specific set of heroes that can actually get to them and try and do something. So I think that's why, like for me, they're a little bit annoying. And Spirit did get buffed quite a bit, so I think his Spirit build does do a lot of damage. But I do agree that he's like pigeonholed into one build, and there's very few heroes where that feels like it's the case. Like his gun damage build is awful. He has one of the worst gun builds in the game, but his Spirit build can do absurd damage. So for me, I'm fine with like him being like the end of C tier or like the beginning of D tier.
Okay. Yeah, I mean we'll put him here then, because I think there's very few, like we mentioned, not very many heroes feel weak. So, yeah, like the definition of weak, like I still would say, compared to most other games I've ever played, the difference between S and D, that sounds funny to say, is not very large, right? When I'm talking about S-ing and D-ing, it's not. Sorry, I'm making a sex joke. So, yeah,
are you?
Yeah. Just call it how it is. Okay, so next up we got Hayes. You're up for that one.
I hate this hero is like probably, I would say A tier or potentially S tier. Like I would probably lean more towards A, because I think Wraith is like the better version of her, which I don't want to get too much into, but I feel like Hayes is probably the most it plays itself hero in the game. And so it's like there's not much there's nothing that you could, if you were to come into this game from any shooter and play Hayes, you'd be like, oh, this makes sense. Like there's not a lot to discover on this hero. Its item builds are pretty solid right now. I think there's some cool ones that are popping up, things like the active reload into Quicksilver and just like 3 clipping an entire team. But I don't know. I feel like she's pretty damn good for how simple she is to play, and that's why I think she's going to be like pretty high on the tier list.
The only reason I don't put her S is because her laning stage seems pretty vulnerable.
Yeah.
So I think mid to late game, she's just changes the game entirely. You have to itemize, you have to play around, you have to like group up because she can pick you off. So I've done really well with Hayes, but like maybe 10 to 20% of games are just over in the first 10 to 15, and there's not much this hero can really do about it, I think, when that happens to her team. So
yeah, that's fair.
Kind of the anti-mage treatment, you know? You start participating in the game a lot more past like 15, 20 minutes. It's not like you can't do anything, but you're not going to be like, you're like a Spectre with free farm. Like you're going to get the farm, but then you need like 4 minutes of farming with it to actually do anything. And a lot happens in 4 minutes of Deadlock. So
yeah, I kind of like it, kind of like how you described her as the anti-mage almost of Deadlock. She really does feel that way.
Yeah. And her contribution to the game can also be anti-mage, where she blinks in one time, you know, goes in and ults, and just everyone disengages, and then she dies after. It's the classic.
Yeah.
But yeah. So next up, we got Infernus. I would put him low S from what I've experienced. I can't seem to win with him very well, but I feel like good damage output, good scaling, teamfight control. He's insanely powerful around mid boss. I feel like. Is something I've noticed. I think mid boss seems like a lot of tiebreakers in the highest games, like when the game's about.
Dude, it is so big.
So I think any hero that offers mid boss yoinking is just strong. So yeah, I'd put him low S because he's also pretty decent skill cap, I think.
Yeah, Infernus does feel like a little bit of a bait hero in terms of being able to actually win for some reason.
So you'd put him in A, maybe, or a little bit lower.
Yeah, well, no, I think low S to A is actually correct because he is very good. Like every time I play this hero, even if I lose, I'm like top damage, like tons of building damage, like tons of health. tons of life steal, tons of sustain, and it feels really good to play this hero. But then you lose, and you're like, how in the world do I lose these games? And I think part of it is this hero brings out like the greed itemization in a lot of people, and they don't build enough defensive stuff on him, and then they just like die, and you feed, and you're like the highest net worth hero in the game, and you die. And I think that's where he's like a little bit of a bait hero, because he's really easy to farm with. So people build a ton of souls, but they don't, and they're just like, if I go fully aggressive, it'll be fine. And then you die, and you're like out of the game for 70 seconds or something.
I think he's similar to Hayes for the first 20 minutes in terms of he plays himself, and then like later on in the game, he's really nuanced about when you go in or not, like what items you buy. So if we were doing like a hybrid difficulty to master, I think Infernus is way up there. Tier list. So okay, next up.
He's very difficult to play at the end game for sure.
Yeah. I get lost late game. I keep losing because I build the wrong items. I feel like I always learn something when I'm playing this hero, but I always feel like I end up having underwhelming impact no matter what my start is, even though...
Yeah.
And it's not because the hero's bad, it's because I learned something, so...
Yeah.
So next up, we got Ivy, and that's your choice. What are you thinking?
So this week specifically, I wanted to try the Ivy bomb build, and it's one of those things where I think right now she might be an S tier hero because of just how insane the bomb build, even after the nerf is. But I have something I want to bring up later in terms of what I learned this week as well, and this is why I'm going to put her in S tier. I do think she's an S tier hero right now.
My only comment is that people can farm with bomb, with Kuzu bomb, and I swear, Ivy players, I played like 25 games of Ivy this week. If your ultimate is available and you see a fight going, just fly over there, drop a bomb, throw a kudzu bomb, and you can go back to farming if you want. I don't need you to be clearing ancients all fucking game because your first spell can, okay? That's my public service announcement. It gets really freaking old because your ult plus kudzu bomb's like 500 damage instantly. It's like...
Oh, it's way more than that. The ult alone is like 600.
I'm saying early to mid game. Like, I'm not talking about late game. I'm saying like, no matter what's happening, how many times I've seen an Ivy mid game with ulti available just not go to a big fight, and she's like kind of close to it. And I've realized that the verticality of this hero is really strong. You're talking about the flight heroes, so I would agree. Kelvin.
Yeah. God, man, the master of ice, Mr. Kevin. This one I have a hard read on right now. I want to say he's B tier.
I was going to put him right there. I was going to put him right in the middle.
Okay.
I agree.
I do feel like right now he is, they nerfed his really OP gun build. Gun builds in general got nerfed. He does have a very strong lane. I think if you have like a double grenade lane, this hero is absurd. And I think this is where he shines the most, is like pairing him in a dual lane with another hero.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. If you pair him with another strong lane bully, you just knock down the enemy heroes in the tower really quick, and you can just start rotating, taking towers. And I think that's when Kelvin's very good. But I think in passive games, this hero is really weak.
I think he's also high variance, and like your snow globe can like change the fight, and it can also just like ruin the fight as well. So I think he's B tier. We're talking about the impactfulness we feel from these heroes in our games. Combined with like what we think they could be on average. And I think a lot of it is like in pubs, Kelvin does require proper coordination to make use of. While I think a lot of the heroes were put at the top, like, Dynamo is the number one hero right now, but like I feel like as long as there's an ounce of communication, Dynamo's a lot more straightforward. You have more of like a chronosphere from Kelvin that can grief when it's like Dynamo spell's either going to hit or not, and it's pretty straightforward. Hit enemies with it. Doesn't matter where your allies are. But okay, so Lady Geist, I played a decent amount of her. I would put her probably low A. I feel like, honestly, really good Lady Geist players seem insanely oppressive, similar from the laning stage as Kelvin. I think she wants to be in a dual lane. I think she can outbully pretty much every hero in the game as long as the other hero with her wants to threaten as well. I think she's similar to Kelvin, but I also think that like I've seen 3 or 4 Lady Geist just become like absolute freaking raid bosses off of a decent lane, and you just, if she gets ahead, she can just buy items that make you not want to focus her, like Return Fire, for instance. And then you just never kill her. I feel like. So I've never, other than Shiv, I would say Lady Geist is the only other hero I've ran into where no matter what happens, we just can't kill this person sometimes. So that's why I'd put her A, but I'm down to be a little bit lower as well.
I was gonna say she is the closest to an S tier hero without being S tier.
Oh,
I think she's high A.
Okay.
I think Geist right now is crazy strong.
Okay.
Um,
When you
once you
reacted, I
have,
thought
like,
you were gonna put her a bit lower.
No, so I think when you get like spirit life, like just any spirit lifestyle on this hero and max bomb, this hero is just racked. Like I actually don't know what you do. She is one of the best lanes in the game. She has like her gun is still like a little bit weak, but if you can hit your shots on this hero and like play the spirit build, she is insanely good. I think this hero is probably the hardest to execute right now based on the heroes that we see, right? Like she's definitely a finesse hero similar that Dynamo is. But like you said, if she gets ahead and starts snowballing, like I actually am with you, this hero becomes almost impossible to deal with because you need a curse. Like you have to itemize a curse to deal with this hero late game.
Well, yeah, you need to commit onto her to kill her, and she's really good at poking, so you don't want to play her from long range. And so you either can commit and kill her or not. And good Lady Geist players, I feel like, are super oppressive. So sounds like we're in agreement there. Okay, you're up.
Yeah, she's really good.
The asshole himself.
Mr. Lash. I feel like this is another maybe like high B to really low A hero. I feel like his kit right now is very good and he's definitely an asshole, but they did do some solid nerfs to this guy to nerf his mobility. And I think it was necessary because it was super annoying. I would put him above Kelvin. I would. Okay. I just don't know if I put him on the same tier as like Hayes and Abrams right now, but I feel like he is still very good situationally.
So we don't have any context like other than B tier. I usually think B tier heroes are like in the hand, like I remember in my Dota tier list, I would put, if you specialize in this hero, solid pick. Like that's what my description of B tier would be. And I agree with Lash. Like the majority of Lashes are not very impactful, but I have also seen insanely impactful ones. So I think both of these heroes in B tier so far have pretty high skill ceilings and like execution ceilings. And they either use them or they don't, and pretty high variance in their outcome and their impact in the game. So yeah, I agree. B's perfect for me. McGinnis now.
Oh.
So this is an important one because we talked about our experience in the game. So I personally think McGinnis is up here somewhere. Okay. But every McGinnis, I'm talking like 95% of them, they will walk into that walker solo no matter what. You see them push 3 creep waves leading up to that walker. They will walk up and die solo. And if I call, hey guys, bring 3 heroes here, that guy will fucking die. 100% of the time, they're 1-8, number 1 net worth on their team, and they lose every single game. That has been my experience with McGinnis. Like, if I'm talking average impact in my games, I'm putting them down here, okay? But I also think when played properly, grouped around, taking early objectives, she's terrifying. So I think she's like possibly up here. So I would put her like here. But what are you thinking?
No. So I've been playing her a little bit this week. I tried the spirit builds. To kind of just see how good like the spirit build was. But again, something I kind of want to allude to, which is there is some new builds coming out because I think I can't really talk too much about it because it's my entire what I learned this week segment.
Okay.
I will say I think she's a B tier right now because there is the exact thing you talked about where the people who are just, they walk down lanes for 40 minutes, win or lose. And that's all they do. You know, they actually have no other way of playing the game. They're like, well, I did my job. And you're like, did you? And then you have the people who play McGinnis who want to group around their team and like take objectives or like force fights. And, then she's, cooking teams. But
relentless pressure in terms of the map. Like, she will kill all your buildings with like a decent rallying behind her for sure. Engaging into the turrets, and when she has ult, it just feels impossible. But not when you're 4v1, and that's what she is. So
yeah, I agree.
Okay, So I know I talked about McGinnis first, and maybe that was a mistake because you were playing a lot of McGinnis, but I have been playing a lot of Moe and Krill in general.
Oh,
And
my Krillionaire.
yes, with the buffs, I actually think he's high A, like somewhere around here, like mid to high A. I think that in the first 12k net worth you have, there needs to be a fucking Phantom Strike in there. And if you have this against the likes of Grey Talon, Haze, Vindicta, you ruin their fucking games. Like, their games are over. These heroes cannot do anything. That has been my experience, because you Phantom Strike, you ult instantly, your Q plus Torment Pulse, and they die. Like, they will just die full to zero. They don't have any items they can buy. But my experience with Moe and Krills is they don't do that, and they buy a bunch of Surge of Powers. Like, those items are great later, but they're just rushing all these farming items, and then rather than being impactful. So I'm also down to put him like low B because of that. But I think he's one of the strongest initiators in the game.
I think he's also an A tier. I do. I think he's like similar to Abrams, where it's like there's few heroes that fill this role of I can go in and force the engagement, or I can force the fight. And there's not a lot of spells that pull Krill out of Burrow, you know, and I think those are some of the hardest counters in the game to him, is like when you have a hero who can legitimately pull you out of your Burrow and you're like, well, shit, I have to avoid them the whole game.
Those are
but
annoying.
This hero is so good. He's insanely strong in lane. He scales incredibly well. He has an amazing AoE disarm, which is not
Their
easy
pronouns
to find
are they,
game.
them, please.
Yeah, he is so strong. I want to say, I think Torment Pulse, like getting buffed, was like one of the things that made this hero so dang good, because he loves Torment Pulse.
Yeah,
but you're right. Once he has Phantom Strike, this hero goes sicko mode.
Yeah. Down. Okay, Paradox for you. I don't know too much about Paradox other than what I've played against it. So
I think she is like I would say high C hero, like above Bebop, but like below the B tier heroes. She's very good in the right hands, I think.
I don't have too much else to say, but I agree.
Yeah.
Like, watching high skill Paradoxes, and my opinion is she just looks harder to pull off than like most other heroes in the game. And if you're able to win with this one, you're probably able to win with others. That's what I would say defines these lower tier heroes. Like, why pick this when you can just pick something else? Is basically my thought. She's got a really cool kit, and I think there's like the appeal of that to the hero. Like, she seems pretty fun. But yeah, it's just harder to win than other heroes. So
she had too good for too long, and now she's been finally nerfed. But yeah, you're right. The best way to describe her is she's more difficult to play for the trade-off. Like, her swap is so crucial that it's like if you don't hit swap, you're kind of just waiting, and it's like, you know, cool, I guess.
Okay. Pocket. Europe.
S tier, for sure.
Yeah, you got S tier? Okay. I'm in agreement.
I mean, this hero is one of the best heroes in the game. I would put him in the front of S tier right now. Out of all of those four, I think he is absurdly good. Like, they supposedly fixed an issue with Barrage like about a month ago. It just did not happen. He still just hits you through walls with Barrage, or through like
barriers.
Through like barrier, like random stuff. Like, Barrage just still goes through it. He has probably the most mobility in the entire game, and is just like Puck, very hard to catch without designated lockdown, of which there's not too much in this game. And so you have to itemize specifically for him, kind of like what you said against the Haze. Like, you have to itemize specifically for a Haze. You have to itemize the same way for Pocket. And unfortunately, his counters are way more expensive than every other hero in the game. You need a debuff remover. You need a curse of some kind. You have to get either like a silence glyph or a knockdown. Like, people have to deal with Pocket, or he just takes over the entire game.
I'm not even gonna disagree. I agree on all fronts. So we'll go on to 7. I would put 7 probably above Paradox. I think he feels pretty underwhelming to me. He's not terrible. I'd say he's underwhelming, but he's also easy. So he's a little bit more stable than these other C tier heroes in terms of what they're going to offer to the game. But I think Raze, Haze, and Seven are all in a similar category of hard farmers that have some semblance of like solo kill potential, a little bit of overlap there, and I think out of those three, I'd just much rather be the other two. That's my opinion right now.
Yep, I think we're in a kind of a more burst heavy meta right now. And Seven's damage is not super bursty, and in a lot of fights, you like don't actually want to ult.
Yeah.
So you're like, I guess I'll go ult this basement really quick to just like insta kill the basement, and then you're like, that's what feels weird about this hero. So I think for the most part, I agree. I think he's probably in the C tier. Just again, another one of those. There's other heroes that do what he does, but better right now.
Okay, we got Vindicta next.
God, I don't know how to feel about my girl Vindicta right now. I want to say she's A tier. I'm just not entirely sure where, because I don't feel like she's one of these heroes that like if someone can actually shoot well, this hero is stupid. Like the amount of burst damage she can do with just so few items early is insane. I think she also has a lot of different builds. So that's why I think she's A tier. Like you can go more into bullet damage, you can go more into spirit damage. You can just build her as something that I'm going to get to later, which is again one of the reasons why I think she's A tier. She is probably one of the most annoying heroes to deal with because there are few ways to get to her, and unless you have one of those like select heroes, I think she's pretty safe in most games.
My one comment about Vindicta is that she is bounty hunter of this game. Like, she is the hero that you cannot be giving kills to. And you have to itemize accordingly. And it's not to kill her, in my experience, as much as it is to survive the minute, like, 6 to 15. Where she doesn't go around lane to lane just killing people. Like, I'm buying Enchanter Barrier for the extra, like, 300 shield or whatever, the extra health, because she does, like double damage or whatever when you're below half, and people are just going their normal item builds. A Vindicta comes to your lane, kills you full to 0, and it's like double souls than a normal kill. And these are the games that I feel like snowball the most is when I'm against Vindicta. So, but I also think in the right hands, that's still hard to play around, and it's harder to play around than it is to play Vindicta. I feel like there's more knowledge of the hero required, and I think when a hero requires people who don't play it to have knowledge of it, it like naturally makes the hero better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
I think she is very annoying. You can the thing is you can just go like extra charge and like improved burst as your only spirit items and hit someone for like 800 damage on the assassinate.
Yep.
So it's like someone has like a 1600 health pool. You get him to half and you will one shot them from 800. And that is what makes this hero so scary. Like you said in that early game, like it feels oppressive in a way in terms of dealing with her. Cause you're just like, I thought at 800 HP I'd be fine, but apparently I'm not. Yep. And then she just gives like 600 or 800 bonus or 1,000 souls worth to like her and the people that assisted on the kill. So
850 when she has her max ulti, which is what most people. What it is? Yeah, 850.
Yeah, it's a lot. So I think she's very good. I think, like you said, does take a little bit of a specialist to play her, but she is super cool.
Yeah, so I would put Warden in low B. That's where I would put him. I feel like I'm thinking the same thing about all 4 of these B heroes, which is high variance of impact, but overall, I'd say slightly below average in terms of their contribution to the game. But if like a Warden player gets snowballing, they're clearly very familiar with like running around with slowing hex super early and hitting you with the grenade and removing your stamina. This hero's scary, but I've also just seen so many Wardens that do jack all. So that's where I would put him. What do you think?
I think he is high B for me. I think there is some kind of sweet sauce builds coming out on this guy lately. I think the Majestic Leap slowing hex build is hilarious. I can see that, yeah. And he is kind of becoming like more of a map dominator because he can pick off people insanely well. And when you go things like Majestic Leap, he can like pair up with a +1. And Warden is probably one of the scariest heroes in the game with a +1 because it doesn't take much for him to kill you. It just needs the root. And with getting things like improved reach, the Majestic Leap, and things like Suppressor and like Fleetfoot, like you can't actually run away from this guy. So I think, yeah, I'm feeling like Warden is like kind of popping up with some new builds, and he could be A tier, but I think he's like high B right now. He's a lot of potential for sure.
Okay. What about Wraith?
Absolute S tier. I hate this hero with a burning passion. I think this is the hero that like takes the least amount of farm in the entire game to one-shot any hero in the game.
So what I think is funny about Wraith, and I want to put her not the highest of S tier, is because I feel like when I'm Wraith and I'm #1 net worth on my team, we lose. I feel like if I am allowed to run around the map and be active, because I need to farm for a bit, but then when I get like, mid-game, I just want to kill people nonstop. And if I'm allowed to do that and just kind of constantly play around my low cooldown ultimate, yeah, absolutely terrifying. Strong laner. The cards are just insane burst when you get 3 charges on them and like the second skill point with the bonus 50. I've been having a lot of success with her, but I've also feel like she has a tough time closing out the game single-handedly, and her impact in like late game team fights feels mediocre. So like for me, it's like if the games are coordinated, this hero's insane. But when the game kind of devolves late game, I feel like she's often highest net worth losing, is what I've seen. So that's why I would put her high S, because I still think she's very good. But I've seen enough of that case where she's got the like alchemist syndrome of highest net worth not winning the game kind of thing.
Yeah, I think if you're playing Wraith to farm, like you said, you're kind of playing her wrong. She is absolutely the scariest pick-off hero in the game right now.
Yeah,
like
by far, yeah.
Nothing even comes close. Like you hear the Wraith ult, and if you do not have an item already that counters it,
you're like,
you are dead.
Yeah,
you are absolutely dead. Like I got capped by like a 16,000 net worth Wraith when I was like 29,000 on Infernus, 100-0 in an ult, and I was just like, I like wasn't worried about her in the game, and then suddenly I was like, oh, literally half my net worth, and she dumped like 2,900 damage into me in a second and a half. I was like, how is this possible?
Yep, you have to go like Ethereal Shift or Unstoppable or Metal Skin.
Like it's just insane how much potential damage output this hero has with so little investment. So I think because of the fact that she comes online so insanely early and then doesn't really ever fall off in terms of being able to just instantly kill heroes. And like AoE lift is a ridiculous ability as well. So yeah, this hero is cracked.
What about Yamato? Tomato
S tier, I think. What do you think?
Wow. I will have to settle on A tier then, because I feel like the Yamato nerfs hit pretty hard. I feel like before this patch, I thought she was S tier, and then I have not been getting overwhelmed by Yamatos very often at all in my games for the last week or so. They nerfed her duration on her ulti. They made it so she no longer has unlimited ammo. I think, like myself included, I'm getting better at itemizing Silencer or Curse. She doesn't often want to build an item that allows her to ulti.
Yeah.
But I would agree to A. I would agree to like mid A, because
I'm okay with A.
Yeah, she also has her Unstoppable with her ulti, and I've seen her steal mid boss like 4 times now.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was gonna say that makes me really annoyed with her. Is she just ults at max HP, drops into the pit, and steals the mid boss, and you're like, cool.
Yeah,
like,
pretty annoying.
Nothing you could do about that.
Also a very high skill cap hero.
Having, like, Kelvin, but yeah, she's a very high skill cap hero. I think definitely some big nerfs hit her, but I think Spirit being as strong as it is right now makes her an insanely strong hybrid hero. And there's some like really high skill Yamato tech you can do that
with the combos of your thing. Your latch on to people, heavy punch.
Massive snowballer.
Yeah.
Like if she starts getting ahead, the game is over.
True. Viscous.
Okay, this one without a doubt is S tier. He is probably the best, single-handedly the best laning hero in the game. He's the only like legitimately full through support that scales, Viscous is insane.
I'm going to put him lowest just because I think he requires coordination.
That's fair.
Like, he's never going to win the game for his team, but he's, like, by far the best utility, I think. And I agree with this. Like,
this hero is a good Viscous player. It, like, makes the game impossible sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like playing against Omni Knight, I feel like, when you're in Dota. Like, you just have a disruptive ulti, you have a save that, like, prevents them from targeting one guy. You can displace people. I mean, obviously, Omni Knight doesn't have that, but, like, you just sit behind your team, and they never want to go on you because you can ult, and then once they go on somebody else, you save them and then ult. So very annoying for sure.
Yeah, there's not much really to talk about with him. His every stage of the game for him is good. He never feels weak at any point. So
agreed. I would like to put Shiv in B.
I agree. Actually,
nice.
I don't think Shiv is as good as I thought he was going to be.
Nah, he feels like the shitty version of Lady Geist right now in regards to damage over time, becomes very durable, hard to focus when ahead, but I'd just rather be Lady Geist or Tomato. Thoughts?
100% agree. Again, I feel like a lot of what happened this patch is things turned into more of a burst meta, and Shiv's primary build is the bleed dagger build, and you have to be at max range. So it kind of is like he waits and waits and waits and waits in the fights to get an opportunity to go in. And that is problematic because he is supposed to be like this damage soaker. And, you know, why does he need to wait to go in when you can just pick something like an Abrams or a Mo or Dynamo and just like actually go in, you know? So I think he's, definitely a B tier hero right now. He has potential in the right games. Like, there's certain games when I got him and I was like, they don't have burst damage and they have a lot of tanks. And Shiv just fucking loves those games.
Yeah,
like,
he does.
He will be uncounterable in those games, but it takes a niche set of heroes for him to feel like he's like really good.
Funny thing about this game compared to Dota, for instance, is you don't get to see the heroes on the enemy team before you pick your hero. So when you're talking about heroes that are heavily matchup dependent, you know, just kind of like rolling the dice going into the game when you pick it. So, okay, last but not least, the new hero.
Dude, I still don't have a great read on Mirage. Have you played him much, or have you played him at all?
I have not played him. I've watched a decent amount of streamers, and I've played against it a lot, obviously. I would put him low B right now, to be honest. Like, I think... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, I think when he came out, he was Giga OP.
Yeah, he was.
But I think he's a B tier hero now. Yeah, I don't think he... I think with good coordination, like having heroes that can combo with his Tornado is insanely strong, and I think the Tornado is probably the best part of his kit. But
early to mid game,
his third ability feels so useless.
Yeah, I was gonna say early to mid game, his Tornado is terrifying. But then mid to late game, I feel like if the enemy's grouped up at all, like you just can't play this hero. I feel like, and then people are buying like Headshot Booster or the Headshot, the one that. The upgraded version of Headshot Booster, Headhunter. They're buying that. They're like poking you with like Mystic Shot Headhunter, and I'm just watching Mirage like watch the fight go. Like once the enemy's grouped up, what does this guy do? Like what does he actually do in fights? Like throw some scarabs. Like your ulti is effectively useless. Like your Tornado, you don't want it to use it to go in because what's your follow up when you go in? So I feel like if people walk at him one at a time. This guy's fucking god tier. He's like literally the best 1v1er I feel like in the game, especially in the laning stage. And like pick off related, like his Tornado dodges stuff like Wraith. So I think he's very good against like the other pick off heroes. And it's like just don't. Basically, you have to act like he's there all the time. You can't just like walk up to a tower and push it by yourself. But if you play according to the fact that they have Mirage, he's like a plus 2/3 of a hero, meaning like. He'll be at the fight, but his ultimate is what gets him to the fight, right? So as long as you're not overly extending, then the hero just feels pretty lackluster. And I've watched plenty of people be like 10-0, absolutely destroying with this hero, but it's a 6-on-6 game. It's not like Dota, it's where that's 5-on-5. It actually, in my opinion, makes a big difference in terms of your individual impact in the game. And like past first 20 minutes, I feel like this hero feels really underwhelming from what I've felt in my games, and also witnessed like really high skill players on stream just like kind of dud it out when they're like 10-2.
I feel like I feel like there is a little bit of an identity crisis with Mirage because you look at Scarab and Tornado and you're like, this guy is a tanky initiator kind of fight disruptor. And then you look at the other two abilities in his kit and you're like, okay, well, no, he's a bullet damage like assassin of a way, right? And so in order to like take advantage of half this hero's kit, he requires a lot of farming, like to the same level of like any of the other hard carries like Haze and Wraith and Furnace. Like he actually has to be one of the hard farmers on your team, I think, for him to have impact late game, because you have to build things like Ricochet to have him have late game impact. Like you end up having to build things like Burst Fire and different and like escalating intensifying mag. Like you actually need to build these types of things on this hero in the late game. But then it comes to like this weird thing where you're like, all right, well, I'm just like farming around the map the whole time. I'll TP in, you know, when I need to. And it is a cool gimmick, but I think there is like a weird dead spot for this hero in the game right now where he's like
seems kind of deadlocked where he's at, you know.
Yeah. Oh, not a gridlock. What's the other one?
Yeah, like deadlocked in. I think. Yeah.
I think you're right. I think he's a B tier. I think he's very close to being overpowered. Well, he was overpowered when he first came out, but yeah, I think he's like in a weird spot.
Agreed. So I'd say we're both settled on this. This is a plan of ours to spend as much or as little time every episode updating this tier list. So this was the first time we did it. I'm going to spoiler alert a little bit, Ricky. Tell me if you strongly disagree, but I think we're going to veto the other tier list for today because that, I'm happy we spent so much time discussing, but that took like, I'd say what we normally want the entire episode length to be.
Yeah,
that took like 45 minutes. So totally fine, but we're going to postpone the other
we'll postpone the next tier list till like next week or something.
But every week we're going to spend like 1 to 10 minutes depending on like how big of a patch there is, something that changed about the meta, whatever, for this tier list. But we'll keep playing off the same tier list. I'm going to bookmark it and save it, all that kind of stuff. But for the people who are just listening, I'm going to quickly read it off, like just to kind of keep tabs on what we got. So S tier, nice. Pocket, Dynamo, and Furnace, Wraith, Ivy, Viscous, in that order. A tier, we got Lady Geist, Abrams, Tomato, Haze, Vindicta, and Mo and Krill. In B tier, we got Warden, Lash, Shiv, Kevin, McGinnis, and Mirage. And then in C tier, we have Seven, Paradox, and Bebop. And our lovely grandfather in the D tier is Gray Talon. And these are just generally what we think the impact or potential impact of these heroes in pubs, or in kind of like a little bit of mixture of like on average pubs slash coordination slash high tier games. What we think to expect if you're seeing this hero in your games on average. So with that being said, we did have another segment. I know I'm taking over a little bit of the hosting job here, but
keep it going.
So the other segment that we've been wanting to do every week, and you've touched on it a few times, and it seems like you're pretty eager to
It'll give a lot of context to this tier list.
So I'd say for this week, I guess since we spent so much time on that tier list, we can close it off with this segment. Maybe this can be the closing segment in every podcast because it's kind of like a nice little, send off of, what we discover. So since I have things to think about, but you clearly have one. This is the what we learned this week segment that we want to do every week. So what's yours, Ricky? What are you going to share with us today?
Supporting is back, baby. I actually, there is a trend I noticed in some of my games, in some of the higher tier pubs as well, which is that people are getting a lot better at farming. People are getting a lot more efficient at playing the map, and there is a point in the mid game, like 25 to 30 minutes, where you look at the map and there is no camps anywhere on the map at all. No one can farm anything, and you're just kind of fighting over a little bit of farm in the lane and like waiting for camps to farm. And with the way the game is right now, like your heroes kind of level up together as you take out objectives, as you split farm here and there. So I have been seeing a resurgence of several heroes building complete full designated support paths or like hybrid support paths. And I've seen games where there's like 3 rescue beams. I've seen games where there's like multiple healing novas. I've seen like McGinnis, like go just like 2 heal max wall and just do nothing but go full support healing builds, like, and they're owning. And it was like I was so confused initially, and I think what I'm realizing this week is like now that people are getting better, there are way more efficient ways to spend your money. And you don't need every hero to be a massive damage dealer. And there are a lot of potential supports that we have been overlooking this week. And so that's why I was saying, like, I think McGinnis could be higher on the list because there is a build where you are just a full support. You just go 2 points heal, max the wall, max your heal, and then that's it. And like she's online at that point. Like there's a build with Vindicta where you just pick up a casual rescue beam because you can launch people if they get in bad spots. Like there's so many cool builds, like Ivy, again, one of the quintessential core support heroes initially by design, who has an amazing spirit build, but is also really benefits from building things like a rescue beam. So there's just, I think there's a lot of like hybrid support builds kind of popping up.
I guess that kind of falls in line. That's an interesting point because I think, just to kind of respond to what you said, you're talking about the utility support aspect of things. I want to talk about like the carry's perspective of that phenomenon. Okay, so I guess what I'm trying to say is that I feel like as I'm getting better, what I'm noticing I feel like if I'm getting better, fingers crossed, that my opponents on average are also getting better. So I'm noticing in my games that people are dual invading camps. They are like running around, pushing a lane as 2, quickly leaving to another lane, pressuring that. And so I want to first say that in the first 10 minutes, if you are jungling, stop! If you haven't killed the Guardian in your lane and you're jungling and somebody else is there, I can't tell you how many times I am like in one of the mid 2 lanes and I go to a side lane pre 10 minutes and I'm like, we can just pressure this. And the guy just leaves. Okay? I'm like, where are you going? Like, what? Like, at least push the lane with me. Like, we both get experience. So I guess what I'm trying to say is people who are really good at min-maxing, pushing waves as 2, and then collapsing on a lane or collapsing on a jungle. And I think that kind of feeds into the fact that some heroes want to build to enable this aggression. I feel like in Dota, for instance, your farming items come out a lot sooner. I think in Deadlock, people are getting, as I'm noticing, that carry players are going like 9th item Ricochet. Or like, like they want to fight for the map as soon as possible. And once you take the Guardians, once you take like a Walker or 2, you can retreat to your side of the map because you've taken theirs and they've got nothing left to do. Like you've invaded their area. And what happens a lot of times is people will jungle passively. They're taking our Guardians or Walkers and then the map's gone because you can't walk forward and all the camps behind you are dead. So you're mentioning the camps getting farmed, and so that made it so more junglers, or not junglers, more supports are coming out because there's limited resources on the map. So I would like to say that it's so funny to play carry in this game because other than Haze, I think pretty much every hero I've seen can have impact. Like, Haze can have some, but like I feel like on Haze, you kind of have the most part dodge fights and play for your timings. Like you get Ricochet plus Unstoppable and max ulti and you're just a god. But other than her, I'm playing Wraith, I'm playing like Infernus, like I'm playing these carries, quote unquote, and they need to be in the game, fighting for towers, fighting for things. So even if you're not buying support items necessarily, like I'm not saying that that's not true. I haven't gotten the luxury of, I've had some people buy rescue beams and it like changes the game for sure. I have seen that. But I just feel like people need to know this game's meant to be more of like a war zone for the first like 12 minutes. And then the game kind of settles down later. That's what I feel like I learned this week is I had a much better sense of like, this is the tempo of the game to kind of expect. And it feels like this style of running at people with 2 or 3 heroes is objectively better than like every other playstyle that I've witnessed. If you run at them with too many, then you're like losing towers on the other side of the map. If you're split farming all game, you're just useless. Like you get ran over. So that's balancing around like these 2 to 3 man goon squads of taking towers and camps and lanes, which requires supports and enablers and damage. And like you said, not everyone needs to do damage. I feel like heroes die pretty easily in this game. when they're outnumbered. I feel like is what I'm noticing. So, that's our what we learned this week segment. Did you have any responses or thoughts to real quick bounce off of what I said?
No, I think you made a lot of really good points. What I've noticed is a lot of it comes down to if one of the dual lanes like wins hard, it's what they do with the win in their dual lane. Like if they snowball, they beat their lane, they take the Guardian. If they just sit in lane and just continue to farm and do nothing, then you essentially waste the opportunity, like you said, to kind of snowball the game in your favor. And yeah, that makes a big difference, you know?
Well, like, okay, just quickly, what you mentioned, if a dual lane wins and you just push in the lane and quickly wrap behind one of the other side lane that's 1v1, literally just scare the guy off the tower. Like, yeah. I'm talking just, you can be there for 5 seconds, even if you don't kill him. You scare him off the tower, leave one hero there, because now you've got 2 heroes there and they still get the same amount of max experience, right? Leave the other guy to go back, and suddenly that tower is gone. And this takes like a minute. Like, not even. Like, 30 seconds to a minute, and you maybe miss half a creep wave. Like, it's not even like you miss anything. And this, like you mentioned, like, I feel like the dual lanes, because of the way soul sharing works, are twice as snowbally. Like, they're twice as impactful as whether or not a solo lane wins. And I'm just surprised that when I'm playing solo, that I don't get rotated on by the enemy, or that my teammates aren't diving them either, because when I'm in the dual lane and I'm winning, like, it feels really easy
to just connect to a side lane.
Just connect. Yeah. So even with them expanding the map, I think it makes it so it's not OP to like go split souls like in the past. So I like what they did to make the map bigger, but I think there's just not enough of that. But people are going to get better. You know, you balance people with MOBA knowledge, which we have, with people who have like sick shooter knowledge or like shooter experience. So there's probably a lot of those. It's like understandable why people aren't necessarily up to full speed on these concepts. But yeah, with that being said, a little bit longer of an episode. I can't remember exactly what time we started, but
I think it was almost an hour.
Yeah, almost an hour. Not bad. But yeah, with that being said, any closing thoughts, Ricky, for the podcast?
I don't know. I think I'm excited to see what people continue to come up with, because I think we're still very much on the scratch the surface level in terms of like fully discovering this game. And as we add more stuff to it, it's just going to get even more complex. So I'm excited for that. But yeah, I'm just going to play some more games and have fun.
That's what it's all about. I mean, we made this podcast for people who, you know, whether you've been binging the episodes all in a row or you just tune in for this one last minute alive. We're making the podcast because we're just creating discussion around a game we're really enjoying. It's kind of like an entire frontier to explore, and it really tickles that itch, scratches that itch of all the games that we've grew up playing, like the shooter games like Halo and all those. Like, it has the like crazy mobility shooter aspect, but it also has the MOBA macro map movement strategy side of things, which, yeah, it's just a lot fucking going on. Like, whether it's the theory crafting part that you're talking about, learning something new every week, or whether or not just in the middle of the game, it's like, what am I looking at on my screen? Like, holy crap, what did I just die to? A lot of different builds being tried. Everything's very fresh, very raw. So that's why we're making the podcast. I think that's why we're both enjoying being here talking about it. And we appreciate everyone here listening to it as well. So that concludes, I think we're officially calling this Deadlock and Load episode 2, because we had like the intro. And then,
do you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah, let's do like fine. The intro episode and then 1, 2. So we'll stick this one on 2. And we'll be back with the 3rd episode next week with another tier list.
More of a fun one.
More of a fun one, not nearly as try hard as today. So looking forward to seeing you guys next week, and I'll see you then, Ricky. Peace.
All right, sounds good. Bye, everybody.
Bye.